Begin by perhaps getting a sense from each of you about how you've moved from the business as usual paradigm to leadership in crisis, what that paradigm shift has involved, particularly from a leadership perspective. And Steve, could we start with you?
Yeah, I think that the big step is one of visibility. So we're generally known as the CEO and the leadership team to the business, but we've really stepped up the engagement and managed that in a very authentic way. I think in terms of the business, we're quite action orientated anyway. So our business as usual controls avalanches, deals with weather events. So we're used to crisis, but this one's slightly different. And probably personally, the best reflection goes back to the Christchurch earthquakes, where there was an uncertainty, but also an intensity of work, which we're experiencing to a similar degree now. I think in terms of pre-planning, that has all stood us in good stead. 50% will be wasted, but 50% things like advancing our remote working capability has really helped us through this process. And work around the team, some historic work we've done over the last couple of years has allowed us to share workload and work much more collaboratively, albeit remotely. For the team, I think humour's a really good factor at the moment, so keeping chins up. And we work on the basis of principle of Te Whare Tapawhā, which is keeping people in balance across their mental, physical, family and spiritual health. And again, we check in as a team, we check in with each other, and it's been quite heartening for me to see people looking after each other, but also surprising the number of people that have said, how are you going as a leader, as a CEO in these times, which means it's not the lonely job that it's often described as.
Steve, you mentioned the need to increase visibility. How have you achieved that, and how are you adapting to YouTube as your medium of communication?
Well, exactly that. We're using more videos with our customers, with the general market, with our employees. And those videos are also work messaging, but also social messaging. So what we are seeing is bringing home to work and bringing work to home. And that tells you a lot more about people. For me, I'm a reluctant film star, and most of it's being filmed and edited by my wife. So I don't know whether I'll adopt it long term, but certainly in the interim, I find it is genuinely connecting us to our people, our customers and our markets.
And Ravid, what's been your experience switching paradigms from business as usual to leadership in a crisis?
I think we have lots of crises in our work, so leadership doesn't change much. I think the big difference has been that I am unable to interact with people directly face to face. So it's now being done through phone calls, through digital means, which is different. And that initially is a little challenging, as Steve was saying, doing the videos and listening to yourself and watching yourself on video is never the same. But the big difference has been about shifting from caring about the business to caring about the people, which is usually about leadership anyway, but that's the big change.
And what about, any previous experience you've been able to draw on, either personally or any other crisis situations that have perhaps given you some preparation for dealing with this new operating environment?
Yeah, well, we are very used to crisis. We have small crisis to big crisis all the time. And personally, we were already in what I would call an incident management situation here at Watercare, because we had a very dry summer and a very dry 2019. Our lake levels are very low. They're at 50%, which is the lowest it's been since 1992, which is when we had a drought then. So we were already in a crisis, but it was a crisis that we call a sunny day failure. It's only a Watercare challenge, not the rest of society. The COVID-19 is a societal challenge. It's a global challenge. So it is very new. So the leadership challenges of COVID-19 is a learning one. So while I've been prepared with a few crises in the past, this is very different. So I'll learn a lot more.
Jeff, Raveen mentioned about this importance of staying connected to people becoming a really important feature of leadership in this environment. What are you noticing about people's different responses to COVID-19, and particularly from the stress and anxiety perspective?
Yeah, so Andrew, half of the population are sort of big picture people, and they love lots of change. So spinning on a dime and making rapid change has probably been a big lift in their engagement. In fact, they love this sort of stuff. How do we recreate? The other half are the people who are stoic, that go about making things happen. They're the operational type of people. They don't like change. They like making things better rather than changing it completely. So, within a senior management team or leadership team, you've got both. And I guess it's about, as Raveen and Steve said, it's about embracing these people and dealing with them very much not just as a team, but offline, one-on-one. Because for some people, this change will be just beyond comprehension. For some, they'll love it. And the big challenge for them and for leaders will be how to keep these ones from burning out, going too fast. And for the others, how can you get them up off the floor? They all wear masks, of course, and so it's up to the leader to be spotting changes and having, insightful sort of discussions with people offline. I think that's the big challenge for leaders right now.
Steve?
Yeah, I think everyone will react differently, but I think the really important thing for leaders is to reach into the human being in it all. Certainly with my leadership team, we have formal communications through video conferencing and our daily dialogue, but we also use WhatsApp. And on that, we share humorous stories, personal messages, and it just makes it human. And that's important across the business, across our customer base and the market. So it's a time for really the nation to connect at a very human level.
Just one thing about WhatsApp that's interested me is, being part of different groups, so that you rather than sort of communicate with people individually, you communicate with teams as well. Have you set up WhatsApp groups on a team basis as well as collectively as well too?
Yes, absolutely. So I try not to spend too long on it, but I will have 6 groups that relate to work. And actually quite a crossover to groups, even going back to ex-university friends that are now communicating with me from the UK, which is really good to get that contrasting view of lockdown more internationally.